Welcome to Simple Things, where small stories spark big changes and growth begins with honesty.
I've been wondering lately what safety actually feels like. Not the kind of safety that comes from locked doors or pepper spray in your bag. Not the kind people measure with alarms or cameras. I mean the kind that's quiet, soft, the kind that lets you exhale without realizing you've been holding your breath for years. Last night, after my shift, I sat out on the balcony. I was still in my scrubs. My hands smelled like latex gloves and hand sanitizer. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I hadn't really spoken to anyone all day, not beyond the routine, not beyond surface-level things. It was just me, the street below, and this question that showed up in my mind, so quietly that it felt like it had always been there. When was the last time I felt safe? And I couldn't answer it. I tried to scan my memories like files in a drawer. Childhood. No. College. No. Even in relationships that looked loving from the outside. Still, no. What came up wasn't an image. It was a silence. An ache I couldn't name. I think there are a lot of us like that. People who show up every day reliable, kind, capable, and still carry this emptiness they don't know how to explain. We laugh. We function. And yet, something inside us always feels a few seconds away from breaking. But we don't say it, because we were taught not to, or because we tried once, and the room got quiet in the wrong way. So we adapt. We become the strong one, the calm one, the one who doesn't need anything. But even then, even in that role we know so well, something inside keeps whispering. Is it supposed to feel this lonely? I'm not here to tell you I've figured it out. I haven't. This isn't a lesson. It's just a story. One that started with a question I couldn't answer. What does safety feel like? And would I even recognize it if it finally came? I've always been the dependable one. The one who remembers birthdays. The one who stays calm during emergencies. The one people come to when things fall apart, not because I have all the answers, but because I don't fall apart with them. I became a nurse partly because I wanted to feel useful, but maybe also because I wanted to feel needed. Being needed felt close enough to being loved. At least, that's what I told myself. I remember when I was 8 years old, my mom told me to stop crying because nothing was actually wrong. So I wiped my face and told her I was fine. That became a habit, a reflex, like breathing. You grow up enough years like that silencing things before they have a name, and one day you forget how to even notice what you're feeling. Or worse, you notice, and you don't believe it matters. On paper, my life looks okay. I have a job, a small apartment, a plant I haven't killed yet. People at work like me. They call me things like rock solid, reliable, strong. No one ever says soft, or safe, or seen. Sometimes I think people confuse being stable with being okay. But I've gone entire weeks without having a real conversation. Not about medical charts, not about schedules, but about things that live deeper than the surface. I come home, take a shower, eat dinner, scroll through my phone, and feel absolutely nothing. There's no visible crisis, no sharp edges, just a dull emptiness, like background noise I've learned to live with. It's strange, isn't it? How you can be surrounded by people, by noise, by motion, and still feel like a ghost in your own life. I used to think that meant something was wrong with me, that maybe I just wasn't built for connection, that maybe safety, the real kind, was just something other people got to have. But lately, I've started to wonder if I ever really had a chance to feel it in the first place. And if I didn't, how would I even know where to start? It was a Tuesday, the kind of day that feels like it's trying to pass unnoticed. My shift started like any other. Same hallway, same beeping monitors, same tired small talk in the break room. I was charting vitals when the call came in trauma case. Incoming. ETA 5 minutes. We get those all the time. Accidents, collapses, overdoses. You don't think, you move. You do what you've been trained to do. But that day was different. It was a car crash. Parents both dead at the scene. Their daughter, 7 years old, still breathing, but barely. When they wheeled her in, I was the first one at her side. She had a tiny scrape across her forehead and dried blood in her hair. But what I remember most was her eyes. Wide open, staring at the ceiling. No tears, no panic, just stillness. It was a stillness I recognized. I don't even know how, but something in me knew that kind of silence. It wasn't shock. It was the silence of someone who had left their body and didn't know if it was worth coming back. I went through the motions, took vitals, called out numbers, nodded when the doctor gave instructions, but the whole time, I couldn't stop watching her eyes. She didn't speak, not a word. She just let us move around her like she wasn't there. And somehow, I felt like I wasn't there either. That night, when I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I just stood in the middle of my apartment and stared at the floor. That little girl, she broke something open in me, not because of what had happened to her, but because of what I saw in her that I had buried in myself a long time ago. When I was 7, I used to hide in my closet during my parents' fights. I'd count the hangers to distract myself. 6 white, 4 blue, 1 broken with no hook. I remember the exact smell of my dad's cologne mixed with cigarette smoke when he left in the mornings. I remember the sound of my mom's footsteps when she was angry. And I remember the moment I realized no one was coming to ask if I was okay. That's what I saw in that little girl. Not fear, not confusion, but the quiet understanding that she was now on her own even in a room full of people. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, or worse, I saw mine. The next day at work, I kept checking her chart. No family had come to claim her yet. Social services were working on placement. And I kept thinking, what happens to a child like that? When the adults leave, and the world keeps moving, and no one teaches her how to feel safe again. What happened to me? I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not my coworkers, not my therapist. I just folded it all into myself, like I've done 1,000 times before. But it didn't stay folded. It started leaking into everything: my sleep, my patience, the way I looked at people. I started seeing the small signs in everyone. The twitch in a hand, the held breath, the too quick, I'm fine, little reminders that we're all carrying things no one sees. And still, I kept going, because that's what I do. Until one night, around 2 a.m., I found myself sitting on the bathroom floor, knees pulled to my chest, palms sweating, and I realized something that scared me more than anything. I didn't know how to ask for help. Not because I didn't want it, but because I had no idea what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it felt like. That's when I knew. Something in me was unraveling, and I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening anymore. I don't know what made me do it. It was maybe 2 days after the panic attack on my bathroom floor. I hadn't told anyone. I'd gone back to work like nothing had happened, like always. But something inside me was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. The kind of tired that lives under your skin. The kind that whispers, you can't keep carrying all of this alone. That afternoon, I was walking home from work, and I passed this group of kids playing near a fountain. One of them fell, not badly, just a scrape on the knee. But she immediately burst into tears. Loud, unapologetic, messy crying. And just like that, her dad scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and said, "It's okay. I've got you. He didn't tell her to stop crying. He didn't say she was being dramatic. He didn't ask her to explain anything. He just held her. I don't know why, but I had to sit down, on a bench, right there on the sidewalk, and I cried. Not loud, not messy, just these quiet, exhausted tears, like my body had finally gotten permission. That night, I did something I hadn't done in over 10 years. I called my mother. We hadn't spoken since the week I moved out. 10 years of silence, broken in 3 rings. She answered like nothing had happened, like we'd spoken yesterday. That was her way, ignore the mess, and act like things were fine. I didn't say much, just that I was tired, that I didn't know why I was calling, that I wasn't expecting anything. She stayed quiet for a long time, and then she said, "I don't know how to talk about these things. I never did." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. Not because it made everything okay, but because it was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. I thought hearing her voice would feel like reopening a wound, but it didn't. It felt like finally looking at a scar I've been pretending wasn't there. A few days later, a letter came in the mail, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. It was from her. Inside was a short note. She wrote about her own childhood, how emotions were punished, how love was conditional, how survival meant shutting down. She didn't say sorry, not directly, but she ended with something I didn't expect. "I never knew how to keep you safe, but I hope you'll find it in your own way, even if it's not with me." I read that line at least 20 times, not because it gave me peace, but because it finally made sense. She couldn't give me what she didn't have, and maybe that's not forgiveness, but it's something close. After that, I went back to see the little girl in the hospital. She was still quiet, still guarded, but she let me sit next to her. Just sit. No questions, no pressure. At one point, I reached out my hand, and she held it. No words, just that, her small hand in mine. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed to fix anything. I just needed to stay. Because maybe that's what safety looks like. Not the absence of pain, not the promise that nothing bad will happen, but someone staying. Even when you have nothing to offer, even when you don't know how to ask for help, even when all you can do is sit in silence and hope someone sees you there. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't break. I just breathed, and it was enough. These days, I still work the same shifts, still wear the same scrubs, still get the same tired lines under my eyes, but something feels different now. Not louder, not brighter, just quieter. The kind of quiet that feels like space, like room to breathe. I don't pretend I've figured everything out. I haven't suddenly become more open, or more trusting, or more healed, but I've stopped running from the questions. And that's something. Now, when someone asks how I'm doing, I don't always say I'm fine. Sometimes I say, I'm tired, or I don't know, or even just, today was heavy. And you know what? Most people don't run away when you tell the truth. Some even lean in a little closer. I don't talk to my mom often, but when I do, we speak plainly. There's less pretending now, fewer masks. We still fumble, but even fumbling can be a kind of love. The little girl from the hospital, she's with her aunt now. Safe. Healing. She sent a drawing to the ER a few weeks ago. It was a picture of 2 hands holding each other. No faces, no background, just that. And at the bottom, in shaky letters, it said, "Thank you for staying." I keep that drawing in my locker, not because I saved her, I didn't, but because she reminded me what staying looks like, what it feels like. So if you're listening to this and you're still waiting for your version of safety, if you've never had someone say, "It's okay, I've got you," Let this be that moment, right here. You're not strange. You're not broken. You're not the only one who doesn't know how to ask for what you need. You're just human. And being human is hard, even when it doesn't look like it on the outside. If any part of this story felt familiar to you, if you've ever sat in the dark, wondering why you can't just feel okay, then maybe this wasn't just my story. Maybe it was a little bit yours, too. Maybe you've also learned how to laugh when it's easier than explaining, how to be the strong one because you didn't know there was another option, how to stay quiet not because you don't feel, but because you've forgotten how to be heard. And if that's true, then I just want to say this. I see you. You're not too much. You're not too sensitive. You're not too quiet, or too complicated, or too late. You are not alone in this. We don't always get to choose the kind of safety we grew up with, but we can begin to create it slowly, quietly, in our own way, in our own time. Sometimes safety starts with something small. A voice that doesn't rush you. A space where you're allowed to feel. A sentence in a podcast that makes you stop and say, "Wait, that's me." So if you're here listening all the way to the end, thank you for staying, for giving this space a little piece of your attention, for allowing someone else's story to sit next to yours for a while. And if you feel like it, tell me, what does safety feel like to you? Maybe it was a moment, a song, a touch, a look that didn't ask for anything in return. You don't have to write a lot. You don't have to explain it perfectly. Just leave a trace. Because maybe someone else is scrolling through the comments right now, trying to name something they've never said out loud, and your words might help them feel a little less invisible. And if this story meant something to you, and you want more spaces like this, you can follow, subscribe, or share this with someone you trust. But no pressure. Sometimes, just listening is enough.